What's up, Citizen? Welcome to another episode of Citizen Ready. As always, I'm your host, Brett, and I'm joined today by someone who I have a ton of respect for, Pastor Artur Pawlawski, and I got a copy of his book here, and he's got a great story and great opinions, and just think it's going to be an awesome conversation. So welcome, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Brett, for having me on your show.
Appreciate you. Appreciate it. So, yeah, I want to just kind of go through just talk about your book quick. You've been, your backstory. What? Tell us a little bit about, I know you're from Poland, correct? And just tell us a little bit about, real quick for people that haven't read your book, where you're from and kind of what brought you to the point of being tackled and manhandled by the Canadian government illegally. Can you, just kind of start at the beginning for us?
Yeah, I think the history is very important because to answer your question, why? Well, it's because I am an immigrant. It's because I grew up in hell behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the socialism and communism. And
Yeah.
of course, I grew up in a very peculiar country, Poland. Poland, if you know, was the first country attacked by the Nazis in
Right.
1939. So I grew up in an environment that I've heard the stories from my grandparents, from the older generation, from my older teachers about what kind of atrocities the Nazi regime did to Polish people. But also with my wife, we grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. So we were able to see firsthand what communism, socialism is all about. And I think that's why I have become such a big target, of the Canadian government, because what we are witnessing right now, and it's very important for the people to understand this, we're witnessing a repetition of history. That's what is happening
Absolutely.
right now in front of our very eyes. So people need to understand, when I travel around the United States, especially, I run into people that will come to me and they will say, this will never happen to us. We have the Constitution of United States of America. We have the Declaration of Independence. We've got our amendments.
Everyone says
This
we
will
got
never,
guns. That's
right?
what I hear. Well, we got the guns. I got
Yeah,
the guns.
but the
Yeah.
problem, Brett, here is it's not going to happen. It's already happening in your country. And that's the
Yeah.
most bizarre thing when I talk to the American people. This will never happen. Listen, where have you been in the past 20, 25 years? It's happening in front of your very eyes. I'll give you a few examples before I'll go back to why the Canadian government is so afraid of a person like me.
Yeah.
In different states, you've got your amendments, you got your first, you got your second, and yet on a regular basis, pastors and activists are being arrested
Right.
for not committing crimes, for just speaking what's on their mind, expressing their ideologies, their
Yeah.
faith, which of course should be protected by one of your amendments. Also, there are states in the United States of America where you're not allowed to carry. Forget about just open carry. You're not even allowed to conceal carry, which
Oh
is
yeah.
against your constitution. I mean, black and white. So there are things that are happening behind the closed doors in your country as well. And many Americans, unfortunately, has fallen asleep. You're on kind of a cruise control. Life is good. Let's cruise around. Let's have a beer. Let's go golf. Let's, yell at the hockey games or baseball games. Life is good. And that's the problem with the church as well. The church has become too comfortable. And of course, when you are too comfortable, when you've got things to lose, you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to push the envelope. You want to just kind of fly under the radar. And that's the problem with the church. So, enemy is not flying under the radar right now. The enemy is openly attacking you. And I said many times on different shows that we're not dealing anymore with immigration. I am an immigrant. We're dealing with invaders. And the
Right.
difference between
Absolutely.
immigrants and invaders is people like me, we came to North America because we loved, and that's a key word. We loved what you were offering. We loved freedom. We loved a republic. We loved that North America was built on the word of God. We loved all of those things. Today's so-called immigrants, again, I call them invaders, hate you. They hate what you're standing for. They hate your religion. They hate your freedoms, your
Right.
liberties. They hate your constitution and your declaration of independence. They hate it. They are here for one purpose, to take that away from you. And if you don't believe me, talk to the imams, talk to the homosexual activists, the transgender. They hate your guts. They hate everything that made America America. They want to turn it into their hole, their hell that they escaped from. And that's the bizarre thing. Especially the white people have fallen asleep at the wheel, and now we're off the cliff. And God raises people like me. And why Canadian government hates a man like me? Because I have seen this movie before. I have seen the ending of this movie, and it's not good. So a person like me will come and will yell and scream, we must change the script, or else. If you don't change the script, you're next. They're going to destroy you. And if this fight was just for us, that would not be as bad as what we're witnessing, which is the fight for the next generations. So if it's just you and me, well, you can swallow that pill, but they are not coming, against you and me only. They're coming after our children and their children. In other words, what I'm telling you, that this problem is not going to disappear when we are dead. We're going to pass this craziness into our children and their children. So the fight is a lot bigger than most, would agree. So I grew up in a totalitarian system under the boots of a dictatorship where people had no rights. And also why they are terrified of a man like me, because I'm teaching people not only about communism and socialism, but I'm also telling people that tyrants do not care about your piece of paper. So you may yell and scream as much as you want. We have constitution, we got our documents, we got our protections. Tyrants, the wannabe pharaohs, as I call them, don't care about your piece of paper. You Americans must rise up and you must care about your piece of paper, or they will come and take all of that away from you. So now let's go back to history. Poland was the second country on earth that implemented constitution. We were actually the second country right after the United States of America that implemented constitution. We were electing kings in Poland democratically. We were electing kings. And when the Germans attacked us, they didn't care about our human rights. They didn't care about our constitution. They didn't care about our laws.
Right.
What they did, they put, I think it was 50 concentration camps right away, Auschwitz, Birkenau, and others, and they started to eliminate the Poles, and not just the Poles, but other people that they viewed as a threat to their Third Reich, the 1,000-year reign. So when the Americans, Canadians, and the whole world was celebrating the victory over the Nazi regime in 1945, Poland was taken over by force by the Soviets. So the Red Army came and killed hundreds of thousands of Poles, finished us off, and established a totalitarian regime, communism and socialism in Poland. The Russians did not care that Poland had a constitution. The Russians didn't care about human rights. They didn't care about international laws. They never do. And you have to pay attention to testimonies that are coming from people like us, because we have lived it. You could be beaten by the police, broken arms, broken legs. You were taken to court under those show trials where the accused was already guilty before he even ended up in a courtroom, where everything was done as a show trial, as a political theater, to scare others. And you see those things in the United States on a regular basis, the show trials. When the crooked judges corrupt, in my opinion, those judges should be charged with treason. They should be persecuted by the fullest of the law of the United States of America, those crooked judges. And what do? They weaponized the justice system, and they unleashed that against the patriots. And if you don't believe me, talk to the January 6 people, and they will tell you stories of what happened to them. And of course, the pro-lifers that were arrested for nothing. They were not breaking the law. They were not doing anything criminal. They were simply exercising their God and state given rights under the Constitution. So this is happening as we speak. And now going to the book, when I was arrested, I was placed in solitary confinement. And I mean, I was placed in concrete cells and no water, no food, no washroom. So what I've decided to do, and I was told I will be kept in that kind of environment for 2 years. I was taken and put in metal cages. The Canadian government kept me in metal cages, no bigger than a man sitting, and you couldn't stretch, you couldn't move. So I was kept in a number of those metal cages. I was kept on concrete cells. So what I've decided to do, if I'm going to spend the next 2 years in those horrible conditions, like from Middle Ages conditions,
That's crazy.
I've decided to at least document the story. So what I did, prisoners recognized me from the news, and they started to bring me a request form. So in my book, you will see that my manuscript I penned on the pieces of request forms. And when the prisoners, recognized me from the news, I started to have conversations with them back and forth. I led them to the Lord through the doors. I prayed for them, and they started to put those request forms under my door so I could keep writing. Believe it or not, whatever I was putting on a paper was so dangerous to the Canadian government that they confiscated my manuscript 3 times. 3 times Canadian government stepped in and confiscated my manuscript. We had to fight to get it back. Eventually we did, and my lawyer smuggled the manuscript from prison in her documents, and we sent it to the American publishers, and they published the book. The book has become a bestseller in 6 categories within the first hour. And guess what the government did? They stepped in and they hammered the book so hard that it disappeared. People they were ordering and paid for couldn't get the book. The book was stopped at the border. I mean, all kinds of crazy things happened. Why? Why the enemy, the globalists, the globalistic syndicate, is so terrified of what I included in a book, Lions Do Not Bow, which, by the way, you can buy it on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. Well, I decided not just to tell you, poor me, look what they are doing to me. I decided to educate people on history. And not only I'm taking you from the beginning of what happened during, the big lie, I call it the COVID, the conversations with authorities, the trials, the show trials with crooked judges like David Gates, Adam Rook, the crook as I call him, or Gordon Krinky or Adam Germain and other crooked judges from the province of Alberta. I'm telling you what is happening there, but I'm also reminding you about history. I've seen this before, and it's literally copy-paste of what I remember growing up and hearing from my grandparents, and of course seeing with my own eyes in the 70s and 80s in Europe behind the Iron Curtain. So I'm telling you also the remedy. And I think that's why I have become the most targeted Canadian in the history of Canada. I mean, I've never met a man with more tickets, 360 citations, over 120 court cases, and many, many arrests. I was arrested by every force in the land. I had soldiers. I was arrested by our FBI multiple times. I was arrested by detectives. I had police in my home, undercover, helicopters, undercover vehicles, you name it. It happened to me. My record is 120 police officers in uniform, 20 cops on bicycles, 54 police vehicles, anti-terrorists, SWAT team, and the chief of police at our church service. So this
Wow.
record is hard to beat. But
Yeah.
why? Why? This is the most important question. Why? Well, not only because I have seen this before, but also we with my wife, we have seen the remedy. So you got to remember, we grew up in the 70s and 80s where solidarity movement got the momentum. And thanks to the American people, by the way, especially your president that declared a freedom for Europe. And I remember when he said those famous words, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
In 1989, the wall was taken down and the Iron Curtain was broken. But in 1980, 81, and 82, Polish people did something that eventually triggered to the liberation of Europe. They formed a solidarity movement with Lech Wałęsa, and during that movement, millions of Poles simply decided not to cooperate with the tyrants. So this is the approach. We don't actually need guns on this stage. We don't need violence. What we need is enough American people, enough Canadian people that would simply say, enough is enough. We're not going to participate in this. And we have the power to paralyze their entire system. And that's what I said to the people. Polish resistance, civil rights movement in Poland that took down the Iron Curtain and broke down the Berlin Wall was a civil disobedience solidarity movement.
What does that mean? Is that what define that? Not paying taxes, not going to work, not arresting all the like storming the gates and arresting these,
No, actually, it's
thousands
a
of
very,
people
very peaceful.
that are committing these crimes daily against their people. What does that look? I mean, what did they do? What did the Poles do?
General strike. So you've got
General strike.
general strike. Millions of Polish people one day decided we're not going to go to work.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
We're going to
Shut down
endure this.
everything. Yeah.
They shut down the whole country and everything crumbled. I mean, you have to understand the system.
I think that's their plan, though. I think that's what they want. That's just my opinion is like you're never going to like you said, the laws don't matter. The criminals don't care about the pieces of paper. The governments don't care about the pieces of paper, right? And the judges don't care about the pieces of paper. They let the criminals back out. It's only the working class that cares about the pieces of paper, but the working class is the one that keeps the machine running. We're the only ones participating in the machine, and when I say they, I mean the people that created the isms, the socialisms, the communisms, all this Bolshevism, the creators of the isms, which seem to be like a banking, a financial interest, a old order of perhaps, cultists, occultists, what have you. They seem like, order is their enemy. They want the chaos now, like pulling the plug on the system, I mean, we're in World War III, but I just released Galileo Studios. You can go to Galileo Studios and see this short that I released. It's 30 minutes, but it's basically like, what's happening. But the war is against the people and the people of the earth, shutting down resources, shutting down food, shutting down power, like the whole thing is about taking away your cars, burning your junkyard so you can't fix your cars. COVID was a test of authoritarianism. Everybody can see that has any kind of mindset, or any kind of education on, like you're talking about, the history of it. But every one of those things that you talk about, like the whole point was to decimate a functioning society, like and that seems to be like the master plan. World War I, prior to that, you had the World's Fair, and all this great stuff. And then World War I comes along, you just decimate a prosperous globe. Then people start getting back together, you start rebuilding stuff. You get a World War II, now we got a whole new decimate even after the armies were done fighting, both there were cities of people. Dresden, for example, was like firestorm. They decimated the people, cities and countries and historical places that were relevant to the future of society that were not destroyed were then decimated post the war. Once we won, then we went and destroyed everything else. Then you come, and again, it just seems like then you go Vietnam, Korean, you could have those. Vietnam, we're in the same thing. You're decimating a culture. You bring in like a hippie culture, smoke weed, tap in, tune out, like disappear. And that, what does that do? That just undermines society again. So you just can't, you decimate the next generation of like, hey man, I don't want to go to work, So now, then everything starts getting back together. We're thriving through the 80s and 90s. I'm a child of the 90s. 90s were the best. We had all the technology in the world, but it was all attached to the wall. So as soon as you left your house, you were free, but now, and then all of a sudden, what, 9/11, now we're in and then what, a 20-year war. What did that do? It decimated a Middle Eastern region. It decimated their prosperity. It decimated our country, decimated our future. It injured and killed, our own people. It undermined any progression and growth, moving into the future. And now here we are again, Donald Trump, the whole thing, no new wars, all this thing. MAGA, which is the fourth and highest order in the Church of Satan, it's called Magus or Magnus. So MAGA is actually related to that. And then we got a guy, claiming he's Jesus as he's picking a fight, not even a constitutional war. And what's the point? Like I said, back to what I started this whole thing. Now we're on the straight, the biggest thoroughway for the resources, fertilizer, fuel for the world. It just happens to be the place that we have to, get in a fight with and decimate each other. And at the same time, you're just burning swaths of area across the world. The whole thing to me is a plan. It just appears to me to be a plan of burn it to the ground. So my only fear, and I just preface all this,